Evan hadn't expected the Vulpine exchange program to start with a customs inspection that felt like a marriage interview. The officer's tail twitched as she asked, "Are you emotionally compatible with canid physiology?" He blinked. "I have a dog back home." Apparently, that counted as familiar experience. By the time the shuttle reached the Vulpine homeworld, he was already second-guessing every checkbox he'd ticked on the application. Cross-cultural empathy training, comfort with tactile greetings, willingness to share habitat. At the time, they'd sounded academic. Now, surrounded by aliens whose fur shimmered in shades of copper and gold, it sounded like he'd signed up for interspecies speed dating. His assigned partner, Dr. Lyra Vikel, was waiting at the research facility's airlock. She was tall, lean, and very fox-like, intense eyes, sharp ears, and a smile that could disarm a laser turret. "Human Evan," she greeted, voice soft but measured. "You are here for emotional analysis, yes? I will observe your rituals." He froze halfway through a handshake. "Rituals. Human connection behaviors. I read your data. There is touching. Eye contact. Shared meals." She said it clinically, like listing lab procedures. Still, the translator gave her words a tone that made his ears burn. Their quarters were surprisingly cozy, 2 desks, 2 bunks, 1 shared kitchenette. "Shared habitat increases authenticity," she explained. Evan nodded, though his inner voice whispered, "Authenticity in what, exactly?" He tried small talk about research goals, but every sentence turned into a potential misunderstanding. "So, Lyra, you study emotional chemistry." "Yes," she said, tail curling thoughtfully. "Our species regulates emotion. We do not overflow. But humans leak constantly." "Leak," he repeated. She tilted her head. "You perspire, flush, sigh. It is fascinating." She paused. "I wish to witness your leakage patterns in natural context." He nearly choked on air. "That's, not something we schedule." Her ears perked. "Spontaneous? Even better." Every minute felt like walking through a translation minefield. He reached for a snack from his pack, a small bag of chili chips. Lyra's nose twitched at the scent. "Spice. Your pheromones intensify. Is this part of a bonding display?" "It's lunch," he said weakly. "Ah, a casual initiation ritual." Evan decided not to argue. He munched his chips while she took notes, murmuring about olfactory synchronization. Halfway through, she fixed him with an unblinking stare. "Human Evan, your eyes are dilated." "Because the chips are hot," he said. Her ears flicked. "So heat is linked to attraction." He coughed. "To chili. To pain." "Pain attraction confirmed," she noted. He considered throwing himself out an airlock. The next day, Lyra brought him to the lab for what she called a compatibility calibration. There were sensors, glowing orbs, and an unsettling couch. "Sit. We will measure resonance," she said. "Humans connect through vibration." He sat cautiously. "We call it conversation." "Conversation," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "Vibration exchange through sound. Intimate." She leaned closer, studying his lips when he spoke. "Frequency alignment achieved," she murmured. Evan felt sweat bead at his temple. "We usually call that talking." "Talking," she echoed, still leaning close enough that he could count the highlights in her fur. "And afterward you share food. And afterward you rest together." He blinked. "Afterward no. That's just, sometimes people do, but not as a rule." She looked puzzled. "Then how do humans know the ritual is complete?" "We don't. We just say goodnight." Lyra seemed disappointed. "Incomplete ritual. Curious." Evan tried changing the topic, asking about her world's traditions. The Vulpines, she explained, measured emotional trust through controlled exposure, showing their true skin without armor plating. "Only those in deep union see the unguarded form," she said solemnly. "It is sacred." "Got it," he said. "So, like emotional vulnerability. Yes. Vulnerability and temperature regulation. He didn't quite follow, but he nodded anyway. Later that evening, he caught her reading an old human anthropology report, frowning at her tablet. "Evan," she called, "does the phrase Netflix and chill refer to a ceremonial bonding ritual?" He nearly inhaled his drink. "Where did you find that?" "It appears repeatedly in human mating archives." "It's complicated," he said, which only made her tail wag with academic curiosity. "Then you must demonstrate," she said matter-of-factly. "For science." He stammered so hard the translator misfired 3 times before she calmly concluded, "You are nervous. This indicates sincerity." He wanted to sink into the floor. That night, while he tried to focus on his data logs, Lyra hummed softly, tail flicking as she adjusted environmental lighting. "Artificial moonlight improves resonance," she said. "I read that humans prefer it during courtship rituals." "It's just mood lighting," he said. "Yes," she replied serenely. "To establish mood." He groaned into his hands. Her last note of the day read, "Human demonstrates high empathy and confusion. Emotional synchronization, ongoing." As he turned to her, she met his gaze with unsettling calm. "Tomorrow," she said, "we will proceed with the full human mating ritual." Evan blinked. "We what?" "It is required for accurate cross-species comparison." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, because every explanation he could think of sounded worse than silence. The translator chimed helpfully, "Subject agrees," enthusiastically. He glared at it in horror. Lyra smiled, clearly pleased. "Then it is settled," she said. "I shall prepare the environment." When the door hissed shut behind her, Evan groaned, muttering to himself, "Why do I feel like cultural exchange just turned into intergalactic dating?" Evan woke to the scent of something floral and electric, like lavender mixed with ozone. The lights were dimmed, the air warmer, and soft music drifted from hidden speakers. For one disoriented moment, he thought he'd sleepwalked into a sci-fi spa. Then Lyra's voice purred from the corner, "Good morning, human Evan. I have prepared the ritual chamber." He sat up fast. "The what?" "The environment for the human mating ritual," she said, stepping into view. Her fur shimmered under pale blue illumination, and her expression was the definition of scholarly innocence, which somehow made it worse. "Temperature calibrated for human comfort. Scent diffusion active. I even researched your preferred ambience, romantic." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Lyra, I think there's been a misunderstanding." Her ears tilted. "You did not consent." "I mean, I didn't not, no. That's not what look, humans don't have an official mating ritual. It's not like a ceremony." She crossed her arms, tail flicking. "Impossible. All species have structure. Ours involves synchronized breathing, tactile confirmation, and shared heat transfer." Evan blinked. "You mean, hugging?" She nodded proudly. "Precisely. And you perform your ritual differently? Explain." He opened his mouth, realized he had no safe explanation, and sighed. "It's complicated. Usually starts with talking. Sometimes dinner. Sometimes awkward silence. And, it might or might not lead to anything." Lyra frowned, obviously unsatisfied. "Ambiguity breeds inefficiency. I propose a controlled experiment." "An experiment in what?" "In human comfort escalation," she said, tapping her tablet. "I will observe your responses to incremental emotional stimuli." "That sounds, dangerously close to flirting," he muttered. She typed the term instantly. "Flirting. Display of mutual interest through humor, eye contact, and proximity. Yes, applicable." He wanted to die. Lyra dimmed the lights further and gestured toward the couch. "Sit, please. The ritual begins with co-presence." Evan sat stiffly while she took the seat beside him, her tail draping lightly across his knee. "Tactile contact promotes oxytocin release," she noted. "I'm aware," he said, trying to act casual. Your temperature has increased. Is this part of the response curve? It's called embarrassment. She blinked. Fascinating. Then she leaned closer, eyes gleaming. Now we exchange humor. Proceed. He froze. What, like, tell a joke? Affirmative. Okay, he swallowed. Two atoms walk into a bar, one says, I think I lost an electron. The other says, are you positive? Lyra stared, processing. Then her ears flicked back and forth in amusement. Wordplay. Energy and emotion overlap. Effective. She scribbled notes. Now I will reciprocate. Vulpine humor involves double meanings. Evan braced himself. What does a human say after emotional synchronization? She asked with perfect seriousness. That was shocking. Because of electrical discharge during contact. He coughed. That's actually not bad. Success, she said smugly. Your pupils dilated. They did not. Her tail twitched knowingly. Confirmed reaction. I shall document further. The lab's AI assistant suddenly chimed in from the wall, recording experiment 47, emotional crossfire. Evan groaned. Can we not label it that? Lyra smiled. It suits. She tapped a control, and a gentle artificial moonlight filled the room. This stage involves shared focus. In human texts, partners gaze at each other under soft illumination. He rubbed his face. That's not a ritual, that's just romantic lighting. Romantic, she repeated slowly. A word for mutual resonance between partners. You admit correlation, then. Fine, he muttered. Let's proceed. For several minutes, silence filled the room except for the faint hum of equipment. Lyra's gaze was steady, scientific, and just a little too intense. Evan tried to focus on the data tablet, not her tail flicking rhythmically against the couch. Are you comfortable? She asked softly. Yes. Your pulse suggests otherwise. It's the caffeine. You did not consume caffeine today. He swallowed. Then it's the fear of being studied like a frog. Her head tilted. Frogs do not experience attraction. That's not, oh forget it. She smiled faintly, fangs glinting. Humans deflect intimacy with humor. Interesting defense mechanism. He glared. We call it coping. The AI interrupted again. Subject demonstrates heightened neural activity associated with emotional anticipation. Mute the AI, Evan said through clenched teeth. Lyra did so, though she looked faintly amused. Evan, I believe I understand your ritual now. Oh, this should be good. You construct unnecessary tension, exchange confusion, and then pretend not to care. He blinked. Yeah, that's actually accurate. She leaned back, smiling slyly. Then we are perfectly synchronized. He stared. That's not how it. Experiment conclusion, human and vulpine emotional resonance, achieved. He threw up his hands. You can't just declare victory. Lyra's ears perked. Of course I can. Observation complete. She hesitated, then added more softly, though perhaps repetition is required to confirm data. He blinked. Repetition? Yes, she said sweetly. Tomorrow. Same time. With dinner. Dinner. You mentioned it increases success rate. He sighed. Lyra, that's called a date. Her tail flicked in delight. Then I will schedule a date. As she left the room humming, he slumped back against the couch, muttering, Congratulations, Evan. You just got academically seduced. And in the hallway, Lyra smiled at her notes. Human rituals, deliciously inefficient. By morning, Evan had convinced himself it had all been a dream, the moonlight, the tail flick, the word date pronounced like a scientific theorem. But when he walked into the lab, Lyra was already there, wearing what could only be described as an attempt. A human-style dress, or at least her interpretation of one, hung awkwardly across her shoulders, part lab coat, part ceremonial wrap. "Good morning, research partner," she said brightly. "I have prepared for the ritual continuation." He froze. "The what? Continuation?" She blinked innocently. "The dinner stage. You said success rates increase when food is shared. I researched human comfort cuisine." He eyed the table, a chaotic spread of instant noodles, protein cubes, and something sizzling in a pan that smelled suspiciously carnivorous. "What is that?" "Your planet's favorite dish," she said proudly. "Steak. From the replicator archives." Evan's face went pale. "Lyra, that's not steak, that's thornback predator. That's a protected species on your planet." Her ears twitched. "Oh, I thought the human appetite for dominance display required consuming apex lifeforms." He groaned. No, humans don't prove dominance by eating endangered meat." She frowned, tail curling. "Then how do you demonstrate strength?" He thought for a moment, then sighed. "We try to impress each other by not dying of embarrassment." Lyra tilted her head. "Ah, emotional endurance test. Understood." He collapsed into a chair. "Sure, let's go with that." She served him the least threatening dish, noodles that shimmered faintly under the fluorescent light. "I adjusted the sodium ratio for maximum neurochemical pleasure response," she said. Evan slurped. "Tastes surprisingly good." Her ears perked. "You approve?" "It's edible. That's like a Michelin star around here." Lyra looked utterly pleased. "Excellent. I will replicate for future rituals." He laughed softly. "You really don't give up, do you? Persistence is key to data reliability." "Pretty sure that's what all great stalkers say." "Then humans and scientists share traits," she said smoothly. He almost choked on a noodle. "That's not, no, stop making that sound flirty." She leaned forward slightly, tail flicking. "Stop? I have not yet begun." Evan froze again. "You do know what that implies in human culture, right?" She tilted her head. Double meaning detected. "Yes." She smiled with pure delight. "Then progress achieved." He gave up arguing. Instead, they ate in silence, the air thick with something that wasn't quite awkwardness, but definitely wasn't scientific detachment either. When she refilled his cup, her fingers brushed his, a quick spark, a jolt that made both of them pause. Lyra's eyes flickered. "Static discharge." He swallowed. "Emotional discharge." "Ah," she said softly. "Documented." Her gaze lingered, and for the first time, she didn't look like a curious researcher but someone genuinely trying to understand another being. "Evan," she said carefully, "you're kind, you experience fear and attraction at the same time, yes?" He nodded. "Pretty much our evolutionary brand." "Then you live constantly in paradox." He smiled faintly. "Yeah. Guess that's why we write poetry." She blinked. "You record your confusion in rhythmic language." He laughed. "When you put it like that, it sounds stupid." "Not stupid," she murmured. "Honest." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. Lyra's tail settled, the tension easing. For a moment, the line between experiment and emotion blurred completely. Then the AI assistant crackled to life again. "Warning, unscheduled emotional proximity detected." Evan groaned. "I told you to mute that thing." Lyra chuckled. "Perhaps it senses phase escalation." "Phase what now?" "Emotional synchronization nearing climax state." He blinked. "You cannot call it that." "Why not?" she said, genuinely puzzled. "It describes." "Lyra, just, please, phrasing." Her ears wiggled, and she made a note. "Humans react strongly to linguistic ambiguity. Useful in courtship context." He rubbed his temples. "You're enjoying this way too much." "Yes," she said simply. Later, as the lights dimmed and the meal concluded, she stood and offered him a small holocrystal. A gift. Data from our interaction, encoded memory pattern. For you to review during solitude. He raised a brow. You're giving me emotional homework. Her tail flicked mischievously. It will stimulate reflection. He took it, unable to hide a smile. You're something else, Lyra. She bowed her head slightly. Translation accepted as compliment. As she left the lab, Evan looked down at the hollow crystal, feeling an odd warmth spread through his chest. He wasn't sure if it was affection, curiosity, or just the lingering heat of her presence, but it was there. And for the first time, he realized her confusion about mating rituals wasn't the only misunderstanding. Maybe he was the one learning how connection worked, even across galaxies. Somewhere down the corridor, Lyra's voice echoed faintly, Phase 2, a success. He smiled to himself. Yeah, you could say that. By the next rotation, rumors had already spread through the station. Apparently, the human and the foxgirl had reached Phase 2 of emotional entanglement. Evan had no idea how gossip traveled faster than light, but Lyra didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, she seemed proud. Peer observation confirms hypothesis, she said, flicking her tail. Cross-species compatibility, publicly acknowledged. Evan rubbed his forehead. You mean we're trending on the interstellar network? She nodded. Yes. 17 million view counts and increasing. He sighed. Fantastic. We're a meme. Lyra smiled innocently. Meme is positive status indicator, yes. He pointed at her. You're enjoying this. Observation, enjoyment mutual. He couldn't argue that. After all, even with all the chaos, it was hard not to laugh. Somehow, this strange fox-eared scientist had turned his life into a mix of embarrassment and fascination, and it felt surprisingly human. Still, the human mating ritual misunderstanding wasn't over. Lyra had planned one final phase. She called it the bonding simulation. He should have known that meant trouble. They met in the habitat dome, artificial sky, simulated stars, a soft violet moon hanging low. Lyra approached him carrying what looked like 2 glowing bracelets. These, she said, are neural sync bands. Designed to share micro-emotional feedback. It will strengthen understanding between us. He squinted. And, this is safe. Mostly. Mostly? Her ears twitched. Probability of psychological merging, minimal. 3.7%. That's not minimal. But she was already placing one band on his wrist. Relax, she said. If you resist, it could trigger bonding sequence prematurely. He blinked. Prematurely, why does everything you say sound wrong? Because your language is inefficient, she replied smoothly. Before he could protest further, the bands activated. A pulse of light spread between them, and suddenly, Evan felt her, flickers of memory, flashes of color, emotions that weren't his. Curiosity, warmth, pride, and an undercurrent of fear. She froze. You felt that? Yeah, he said softly. You're scared. She hesitated. Your species confuses me. You are fragile, yet you face danger with humor. You fear rejection, yet you still connect. It is illogical. He smiled faintly. That's love for you. Makes no sense, but we keep doing it anyway. Her ears lowered slightly. Love. This term appears often in human data. It is not in my language. Closest equivalent translates to shared pulse. He chuckled. That's actually beautiful. Lyra looked down, fingers brushing his. Evan, when you saw me without armor, you reacted not with shame, but with concern. In my culture, that moment binds souls. I thought I misunderstood. But now I think. He stopped her with a smile. You didn't misunderstand. You just jumped ahead in the syllabus. Her tail flicked nervously. Then you do not reject the connection. Reject, he said. Lyra, you've practically hacked my emotions. I don't think I could. For once, she didn't reply with data or logic. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes shimmering like molten amber. Then our experiment continues, she whispered. At that moment, the Eye's voice blared overhead. Warning! Unauthorized neural synchronization in progress. Both jumped. Lyra grinned. We have achieved measurable interference. That confirms success. Evan groaned. You call this success? Yes, she said proudly. Emotional chaos verified. Mutual heart rate increase. Experiment concludes with optimal bonding. He couldn't help but laugh, half exasperated, half amazed. You really do turn everything into science. She tilted her head. And you turn everything into feeling. Together, we balance. The bracelets dimmed, leaving behind only the quiet hum of the station. They stood there for a moment, scientist and volunteer, alien and human, caught somewhere between laughter and something much deeper. Finally, Evan broke the silence. So, what now? Lyra smirked. Now we document post-ritual results. Preferably over breakfast. He raised a brow. Breakfast? Yes. According to human sources, it follows successful experiments. He groaned, half laughing. You're never gonna stop teasing me, are you? Her tail brushed lightly against his arm. Teasing is ongoing study. And as they walked toward the mess hall, one grinning human and one triumphant Vulpine, the Eye's final log entry summarized it best. Subject pairing completed. Humanity once again demonstrates its greatest anomaly, turning confusion into connection. Evan just smiled. HFY indeed.